Hey YouTube, it is just about 11 o'clock on Tuesday, April the 19th. I just want to talk today about quite a few things. Hopefully I'll get through this in a short amount of time, but doubtful. I want to talk about increase in the rise in the earthquakes in the U.S., as well as just where I see things happening over the next little while, specifically with Cascadia, the Cascadia subduction zone, San Andreas Fault, and as well as some post-glacial rebound and a couple other things for you. So anyways, I'll try and get into it quick. I do say that earthquakes are on the rise. There's a couple of guys, Mike, Patriotic Space, Dutch, even Scott from Believers Underground. The guys had noted that a lot of times information just goes missing off the USGS website. God, I hate that thing. And yeah, I've noticed the same thing. One of my previous videos I talked about earthquakes, and one of my subscribers had asked, well, why don't you start plotting these things and really keeping track of it in Excel. So I'm a bit of an Excel geek, so I'll show you what I've done there. But well, it looks like the Fiji region just had a 5.0. Interesting. Anyways, this is the 7 day for the world greater than 2.5 in the States, and 4.5 for the rest of the world for the 7 days. And it's been always a pretty good list. I've put the link up in a previous video. I'll put it again below, but they also keep a latest earthquakes of 1.0 plus in the US for the past 7 days. And again, I've noted that they wouldn't do this for the rest of the world because this list is just massive. You know, it includes everything 1.0 and above. And a lot of times you need to see that data just to be able to see where the cluster or swarm earthquakes are happening. So I'll put that link down below, and you can take a peek at that. But what I wanted to show you here was I take this information and I plot it into Excel. I just copy and paste all the information and then manipulate it in Excel, changing text to columns and things, and basically creating this handy dandy spreadsheet, which is a lot easier to look at when you're trying to pinpoint areas. It's interesting though, if you click on earthquake lists and maps on the side, you get this little list here, and you can look at the earthquake statistics. And the one thing when you click on this, a little slow site, they used to, up to 2009, they used to track all of the smaller ones as well for the rest of the world. And in 2009 they stopped. It was just too much for them to maintain, unless they were given that specific information. You know, right there it's saying it. But so right here you've got the number of earthquakes in the States for 2000 to 2011, and they say this is updated as of right now, and they've only had 1,094 for the year 2011. I call bullshit. Again, you know, you look at the 1s to the 1.9s and they're reporting at 3. Well, first off, that 1,094 in Excel, I started plotting this on the 27th of March, and you can see it's a pretty massive list, and this is just taking exact screen copies of what was on that 1+0 list, and it's got, you know, 2.4s, 2.8s, 3.2s. It includes the bigger ones. And you got a 5.1 here. That was for Virgin Islands. But anyways, you scroll way to the bottom, and I've got some formulas in here. So this calculates the amount of total earthquakes that are being reported from that 1.0 plus magnitude earthquakes for the US. And it's reporting just from the 27th here. You can see I started doing this March 27th after I did that other video, and somebody asked me to do this. And the last time I updated this, if I scroll to the top, I'm starting to do this on Fridays. So this is already a few days old, and you know, if you look at that list, it's got a few hundred more on there. So so if you scroll to the bottom, it'll tell me that we've actually had 2,286 for the US, and it'll tell me, it just does a quick little math and the dates between, and tells me that's across 20 days. So first off, that earthquake facts, that's 1,094. Well, that says of April 19th. So we're talking almost to the end of 4 months, and I haven't even recorded 1 month here, and I've got 2,200 that showed on the USGS website. So again, here they're reporting where there's only 1,094. So that's why I called bullshit there, because they're obviously removing data. Now I can understand some of these really small ones, the 0.1s, the 0.9s. You get, you know, they've increased the amount of seismic recorders around the states, but it's not like they're adding these all the time. They did a big round in the Yellowstone area in 2005, obviously to record stuff happening with the big caldera that's down below there, and the rise and things with the Earth there. But it's not like they're adding a whole bunch more along the coast here every day, and so, you know, these numbers are fairly consistent. But they do remove ones because, oh, there was construction in an area, and hopefully that won't come back. You know, constructions close to a seismograph machine, and whatever the reason is. But they do remove some. However, you know, when I see 3 on 1.0 to 1.9, I mean, you look at that list on its own. Does that mean I see more than 3 on here? What, are they just removing all of these? They can't be. There's no way. There is no way that they could be doing that much. So if I look at my list here, again, this is only 20 days since March 27th. If there's 365 days of the year, that 20 days only represents 5.4% of the total year. If you take those total earthquakes and divide it by the year, that means we're trending to have about 40,000 quakes of a 1.0 or up. Well, you know, you look at these earthquake facts, that's higher than any of these other numbers have ever been. So anyways, I'll show you some graphs that I worked on in a sec here. But when you look at some of these, if I throw a filter on here and I say, okay, I just want to look at, what do these ones say here? What's a range? 2.0 to 2.9. And they're saying they're 616. 2.0 to 2.9. You're not going to get some construction guys making a 2.0 earthquake show up on a seismogram, or a seismograph. So let me filter those out to a 2.0 to 2.9. So I can go up here and put a custom filter on and say that it's greater than or equal to 2.0, and it's going to be less than or equal to a 2.9. So that'll give me the range between those. Filtered out, I'm showing 595, and those are all, yeah, 2.3s, 2s, 2.7s, that sort of thing. There's 2.9, so I've definitely picked my range right. I got 595 in 20 days, and they're saying they had it updated as of today, 616 only. Well, there's no way that there was only, what's the difference there, 16, 5, 21 difference, that they had an additional 21 2s to 2.9s during that 3-month period almost. Out to lunch. Anyways, I started plotting these as well, just doing a bunch of different graphs. This is the information that's straight off of that page, not including 2011, because at the time I did this chart up, that information hadn't been updated for the 2011. So 8461, all that sort of stuff. And anybody can see that there is an increase. Don't worry about my linear time on the bottom. It's shifted over 1 year. I haven't fixed that yet. I took the individual years and plotted those out as well, just showing the individual total earthquakes, what the increase were per individual range, and then started plotting out all the quakes by the magnitude as well. These go by years along the back, and so this first year is 2000, 2001, 3, 5, yellow is 2010, and then the little bluish color at the back is 2011, which isn't plotted yet. And going this way is all the individual magnitudes. So, you know, if you're looking at all these, this 2010, that's got some definite growth on all of these areas. This section right here is your 2010 2s to 2.9s. That's a big jump over that previous year of only a couple thousand, getting close to 4,000. And again, 2009 to 2010, they didn't add in a ton of equipment to start measuring more and more earthquakes. This is just, we're getting more and more earthquakes. So anyways, I'll keep updating this, because I don't trust what I see on that website there. You know, again, some of the guys have noticed that the stuff has disappeared. So anyways, I'll try and keep whipping along here. The one thing I'd noted is, when you're looking at the areas on like Google Map and where the earthquakes are happening, I don't really see, or I think it's doubtful that it's going to be a New Madrid or Yellowstone that's going to happen first. I really think that it's going to be California, along San Andreas, or the Cascade and subduction zone next, and a lot of that's going to be due to post-glacial rebound. If you're looking at post-glacial rebound and you want to get some information on it, the smartest guy that I know with a wealth of knowledge on this is Scott Bug from Believers Underground. Biggest earthquakes ever, post-glacial rebound. He's got a wealth of information. I really do recommend going and looking through some of his vids. I'm going to put a link up to this one, because I thought this was actually quite well done, this piece here. I'm just going to play just a minute here, and I'll put the links. This was his original handle, Global Truth Network 1, and he's since gone over to Believers Underground. You can tell because he doesn't have his beard on here, so this was a while ago. But I'll send a note out to Scott and just let him know I'm putting these up there as well. But this, hopefully this will come through with the sound and you can hear it.
Glaciers form somewhere else. You still have post-glacial rebound effect. That water is moved somewhere else. It's not where it was before. And this whole Earth has to readjust. Now this Earth is widening at the center. It's 26 miles wider and it's still widening.
It's a big point.
So everything around the center of the equator is at risk. And everything just above the centers of the equator are at risk as well, because it's going to have to readjust. So New Madrid, San Andreas, Beijing, China, India, all these continents are all in trouble. I mean, this is a runaway, folks. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And you're going to have volcanoes blowing everywhere from this stuff, because it's a magma push. So, and since all this radioactive stuff's in the ice, with a lot of these ice glaciers, man, you're going to have nuclear fallout, atom bombs dropping all over you, because they blew up about 200 of those things over these decades with their feminology testing and their above-ground nuclear testing and their Chernobyl incidents. And Chernobyl blew a hole.
Okay, I'm just going to pause there, but I love it. Scott gets on these rants. He's brilliant. One of the key things he was just talking about in there, though, is the fact that, yeah, when you get this post-glacial rebound, I mean, you are going to have the world changing shape, basically. And a lot of that's due because when you've got all that weight on the top of the world and that ice starts melting off, one, that water doesn't just melt off and make an equilibrium flow around the world. You get areas where the seafloor depresses and it collects more water and more weight. You get the plates lifting up because they don't have that weight holding them down. And so that's where I say I think that Cascadium subduction zone and San Andreas are going to have bigger issues before Yellowstone and the New Madrid. I think those would be secondary things that come after this. So there was that one, and there's another great one. This is a good video. He talks about this guy Joe Brandt. It's a good read. So I'll put both these links down below so you can tell this is his Believers Underground. He's got his good Jesus beard going on there. Anyways, the one thing to say about that is the fact that and what he'd mentioned is that the Earth is, you know, it's essentially in this elliptical thing. You've got all this weight on the top and on the bottom that kind of push the Earth out. So it's got a bit of an elliptical shape. It's not a perfect round sphere. And as you get that water melting off, it changes the dynamics of not only just the water and everything, but the actual shape, and that shape changes. allows magma to flow in different areas that didn't flow before because there's no weight holding that down, and you get rumblings happening all over. And that's where I say I think we're getting big changes happening in the North American plate. So thinking about what's going on right now for let me just show you this real quick. Just a quick little image of post-glacial rebound so you understand. This image right here, maybe I can bring up a larger one. I was hoping it wouldn't kick me away. But that ice sheet is what pushes down on the Earth. You know, it causes these depressions up, and that weight, you know, is pushing down. Let me go back there. I won't click that neck a little larger, but as that ice melts, it lifts up and allows the Earth to also lift up, and this water then goes into other areas, and sometimes you get these proglacial lakes form, and that's actually what created the areas there around the Puget Sound, all those little lakes and stuff. So you can see in this image actually right here, location of some of these lakes that have happened, but it was only 20,000 years ago that the ice went all the way down here, and as that's receded off, it's created the lakes, but it's also added weight to the ocean and pushed down sea floors and things like that. So that's where I say it's definitely changing, and this is why I see the areas up here right now. The prairies, this is from the 17th. The prairies, for you folks in the States, that's our grain belts, a lot of our areas where cattle are, but it's essentially, you know, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the three provinces right in the dead center. And right now those ones are having some of the worst flooding they've seen in ages. It's interesting. I'll put the links to some of these articles so you can do a search, and this just gives you an idea about where the flooding risks are. And it's not like we've had tons of rain, but boy, we had a lot of snow this year. BC right now has had some of its best skiing seasons of the year. Mount Washington, which is on Vancouver Island, it had 1,840 centimeters, so 1,840 centimeters this year. And I think that broke previous records back into maybe 1990, 91. That's something like 63 feet. That's a lot of weight on Vancouver Island that's now starting to melt and go off. I think the base right now is still in the 600 or 700 centimeters, 30 centimeters to a foot, so you're still talking a lot of weight there. But anyways, this is the key to see. All of these areas, which typically it happens, there's always a flood level every year, but these are all really high and well above normal. There isn't an area that's just, you know, like typical flooding. There's some lots of flooding as you get that water that would be up here melting off the from up north. Some of it flows down, some of it flows down here. It's not, like I say, it's not just all of a sudden going to be spread evenly over the rest of the world. A couple of these other articles, you know, could be the worst since 1852. I mean, that's some pretty heavy things there. So I'll put these links, you can read them. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. The one thing to note, though, is our grain belt supplies a lot of the grain to the rest of North America, U.S. big time. There are companies that do all their private label products up here, you know, whether it's waffles or breads or whatever, they get the grain from us. And this is just a story about how it's going to, you know, send ripples through the grocery aisles. And it's true. One of the big things in this article is, you know, not only have they had farmers and things just quitting the business because, you know, the grain prices have fluctuated, the costs of fertilizers and pesticides going up, the dollar going way up, makes things like pork and that uncompetitive, industry issues with cattle. It just makes it a tough thing for farming. But one of the things in here, if I can find it, is just the scale of this size right here. Farmers in the flood zone, which this year stretches across all 11.6 million acres of Manitoba cropland. I mean, that's huge. That is huge amount of water. So definitely going to be some issues there. One thing I wanted to show, and I'm probably getting out of area here, is I've shown this picture before, and this is the Cascadian subduction zone, specifically just the Juan de Fuca plate here. This is Washington area, Vancouver Island, going up into BC. You've got your whole Cascade volcanic chain, runs down well past into Oregon. I don't know if there's any in that Cascade volcanic chain that hit into northern Cal, but essentially you've got your North American plate. The Juan de Fuca plate is splitting and going, it's subducting underneath the North American plate. When you get that water coming off all these areas, like I say, if you're adding weight to this side of the plate and you're reducing the weight on this side of the plate, that's going to limit that amount of pressure that's holding this locked area together. And that locked area is the one that, when that goes, that's going to create our 9.0. The other thing that happens there is as this oceanic plate is going underneath and it melts, it's pushing that magma up, and that's where you're having issues with what right now there's clusters going on, or swarms going on around St. Helens and things. I mean, I'd be worried more about Mount Baker or something, just by the size of it and its proximity. I mean, that would send ash everywhere. But I'll show you my little image here. But essentially, again, you've got Juan de Fuca plate subducting underneath the North American plate, and this little thin layer in between the two, between the subcrust lithosphere, is the oceanic crust. As that oceanic crust goes down below, hits the lock zone, that's the part that's subducting underneath, it's going to keep going, and eventually that oceanic crust, once it goes down below into that sublithosphere, it actually begins to melt and joins up with the magma. Well, when it finds those areas where it can actually start to then go up, it's going to go up through those magma conduits. This is just an example of St. Helens, and boom, and you get your heavy explosions, and that just throws it all over. Anyways, I worry about that because that Cascade range, those volcanoes run all the way down. Let me get rid of that, sorry, I was just playing around. This gives you the idea about what sort of potentially active volcanoes are. You know, Baker, Glacial, Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Mount Hood. I guess they do go down into Cali, all the way down to this Long Valley caldera. So, and again, these, you know, Yellowstone, it's a potentially active area, but these ones with the red triangles are ones that have actually been active, you know, in the past 2,000 years. So, okay. So let me just show you why I'm thinking this. If I do a quick peek over here, this is Google Earth, and I've thrown on the KML overlay that comes from the USGS website. If you're looking for it, you go to the USGS website, and on here you can get KML RSS feeds, and you can click on this 1+0. I like the 1+ mags because it shows the swarms. So when you click on that, it'll save it and it'll throw it into your Google Earth. And what you see here are all these little yellow dots around that show activity just by this little legend here. The yellows are what's happened in the past week, and it's nice. It gives you the magnitude, gives you the date. You can click on it, get the more information, and then it'll take you right back to that USGS website. Orange are for the past day, red are for the past hour. So I quite like it. You can zoom in and see. Cali just had one. 2.8. Oh, it's down in Mexico, sorry. And it gives you a bit of an idea on the sizes, by the sizes of the circles. So I like that one. It's good. You can actually start seeing the little bits of the swarms that are happening up. People were talking about with the Washington area. This video is getting really long, so I'll try and cut this short. Essentially, I wanted to show you just a couple of things. If you click on the earthquake overview, which is the earthquakes that come up from this, again, is taking information from the USGS. There's a point where if you zoom in, you actually start getting the older earthquakes, 1952. There's a point, though, where you zoom out, those disappear. These are all just the earthquakes that have happened over the past little while. So, you know, when you click on it, that was March 11th. So I like the two of those combined because it shows you, really shows you the activity that's happened along with those yellow ones in the past week. So this is more like looking at about a month's worth. I wanted to show you also adding in the volcanoes, because when you see those on there, you start noticing the bit of a trend. Now with the volcanoes, you have to actually zoom in to see them. You know, if I'm looking at the St. Helens region, you really have to zoom in to see, you know, St. Helens and all that on there. But unfortunately, then you start seeing those older earthquakes. And if I throw on just a couple of paths here, I just drew in some paths, and you notice as I zoom out, these, you know, they start disappearing off there. So that's why I put in the yellow line. And there's also another set of earthquake or volcanic paths there, and as well as there's the volcanic chains that are out in the Juan de Fuca plate there. So let me zoom out so I don't see those. Yeah, those are the two big ones I always see. So that's just those ones there. You really can see that along that Cascade volcanic range, they're really starting to cluster along there. They even cluster into the ones going down into Cali. And there's some that are happening out in Yellowstone there. I'm going to just take off the volcanoes there because it's a little easier to see. And the other one I wanted to add on was just this blue line here. This is where a lot of the swarms are happening, and this actually does follow the San Andreas Fault. You can see that when you add in that KML overlay, it actually adds some lines for all the plate boundaries. You can see it does follow fairly well along there. So I just wanted to show that because it's interesting to see. I'm going to take off those yellow ones real quick there because I want to look at more so what's happening in San Andreas. Again, those are following in that volcanic range. People had noticed there was clusters going on in Washington that weren't reported on the USGS website, but when you look at it in Google Earth with those overlays, you really can see those. So I wanted to say the reason why I think that San Andreas is getting ready here is as you zoom in on these, and again I'm not going to zoom too far because it starts adding a lot of bigger ones, but there's a couple of main faults that happen in the San Andreas. If I can show that real quick. San Andreas, let me minimize this so you can see what I'm doing here. So this is from the USGS. Where is it? It's just the image of California, and it's showing the San Andreas fault line. Now San Andreas has hundreds of faults in that actual main branch, but there's a couple of main ones that happen on here. Garlock Fault is one, San Jacinto, and the Banning Fault, which comes across here. And what I did was I wanted to see what these actually looked like, so I put in the Garlock Fault, which just happens to flow along where you see those clusters happening there. I also put in the San Jacinto, which it's so many on top of it you can't even see it, and the Banning Fault as well. And I'll zoom in a sec here, but just so you can see. Again, when you start zooming in, you start seeing these ones pop up, which are older ones. I'm just looking at the little clusters that are happening. So what you've got here is you've got the Garlock Fault, not garlic, Garlock, and essentially where that branch is coming off of the middle of Southern Cal there. That's where it starts, and it's essentially where the main part of the San Andreas breaks. And that's where that main sort of break line is there. There's that nub coming off. So I've put in that fault line, and you can see that that's where a lot of those clusters are happening right now. This is the LA area, which is what this area is right here. And this is where the San Jacinto Fault goes, and it actually breaks down a little bit. I don't know if you can see that, and then breaks off again and joins up back down to the bottom. And that's what's happening right here. It flows along, goes back up, and comes right down, and that's following beautifully along those earthquake swarms we're getting. And this Banning Fault again is just about the bottom of LA, right above that nub. And this little tiny white line, if you can see it, this little line right between here, where are these little 1.3s, 1.1s, there's a 2 in there somewhere, that's not part of those faults. So that's where I say, I mean, those are the major faults that are happening across the San Andreas. And when you look at those, they're really following along that center. I mean, there's tons of them. Not to say that there hasn't been a ton happening across in Nevada and things like that. I mean, they had some wicked swarms that were happening. There's so many that those yellow dots, which are the ones that have happened in that past week there, I mean, it's really clustered around that one area. But you click on these and it just spider webs out. There's so many. But again, with post-glacial rebound pushing down, because there's more water now from the melt, it's adding weight to this side of the Cascadian subduction zone. You're taking the weight off the mountains here, which allows this to lift up a little bit, which just takes some of that pressure off that lock zone. So that's where I see this happening, San Andreas first, then more than likely seeing stuff happening along that Cascadian subduction zone. As that plate pushes under, it creates more magma flow, which just has easy access to go up those magma conduits and potentially see another St. Helens, God forbid something like a Baker, before I would see something happening with you know, a Yellowstone, or even with New Madrid. Even though there's been a little bit of activity, a lot of that, you know, in the fracking areas of Arkansas. I think before you see a big major rift happen here, you're going to see big changes over here. Anyways, I'll be doing another one fairly shortly here, just to see what's in your bug out kits. Alright folks, stay safe. Thanks.